All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Excess Exceed. This is Gearface. Sitting here with D. Once again, D, thank you so much for joining me. 2 days in
Thanks
a
for having me.
row, I've been subjecting D to my uh, presence. So thank you for putting up with me. Thank you for teaching me another awesome Exceed character. Really looking forward to this one.
Glad to have the excuse to do so.
Absolutely. We've got Ramlethal today. Um, Ramlethal from Guilty Gear Strive the board game, aka Season 7, and her cool hat and her cool swords and her cool sword carriers. Very excited for this character. Don't know much about her, as is my role on this show. Um, D's here to learn me up good. A couple disclaimers before we get started. Number one, we're going to be playing to win. Talking about playing to win on this show. And if you are not interested in playing to win and you'd prefer playing for fun, I encourage you to play for fun. If the lines of play that we're describing with this character don't sound like fun to you, please play the way that you do sound fun. That does sound fun to you. Um, you'll have more fun that way, it turns out. Number two, we tend to be fairly prescriptive on this show. You'll probably hear D give fairly absolute terms about when to do certain things, when not to do certain things. All of that has an asterisk next to it. Exceed's not a solved game. I certainly haven't solved it. Even D has not solved it. Um, these are the rules of D's strategy for Ramlethal. They don't have to be yours. And especially with a character this new, Ramlethal has only been in print in people's hands very recently. We are anticipating that a lot more things are going to be discovered about these characters, and lines of play are going to evolve in ways that we don't necessarily expect. So if you do have a different line of play for Ramlethal, please let us know. I'm very interested to see where these characters go. And finally, a little bit of bookkeeping. If you are brand new to the Exceed community, welcome. Hope you enjoy your stay here. You might hear D and I accidentally occasionally refer to normals you know as Dust and Slash, as Spike and Assault. You might hear us call Guilty Gear Strive the board game Season 7. These are holdovers from old seasons of Exceed that D and I sort of came up on. If you are interested in learning more about those seasons, it turns out they're all over here, and you can explore them at your convenience. They're very cool. I encourage you to. But yeah, all that aside, D, tell me a little bit about Ramlethal.
All right. So Ralph Valentine is an interesting character. I was debating what approach to take. At the end of the day, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to describe to you, here are all the tools you have. Now go wild. You don't really have a set game plan, a specific in-game or a specific configuration of things. What you're about is kind of looking at what your opponent's doing and then uh, okay, hold on. Do you have any siblings? Younger siblings? Do you have younger siblings?
I do not have any younger siblings. No, I
That's the
am
thing.
the younger sibling.
I'm also the younger sibling. Oh, okay. Well, then hold on. Maybe you can work with me on this side.
Okay.
Have you been the younger sibling and had a hand held to your forehead as you tried to make progress and discovered that you couldn't because your older sibling with more reach
Oh yeah.
was just kind of yeah that right. So Ramlethal is the older sibling,
Okay.
right? She's not a zoner. She's not dominant at range. She's not trying to keep you at range 8. She's not Axel. But she always wants to be out of your reach and able to do whatever she wants to you, and you can't do anything to her.
Okay.
And she's imminently able to accomplish that. But yeah, so let's talk about how her ability works and how her kit works. Ability kind of explains, well, the main way that you're going to do this. After setting your attack, that means offense or defense. This is not an action. This works whether you initiate or whether the opponent initiates.
Right.
You may spend 2 force. And if you do, you have +1 maximum range. This notation means +0 minimum, +1 maximum. Just to make this very explicit, if you apply that to Grasp, then the range is 1 to 2, because Grasp has a minimum range of 1 and a maximum range of 1.
Right.
If you applied it to Dust, then you would have range 2 to 4, because minimum is 2, maximum is 3, so you get +1 maximum.
Right.
That's just the math on how this notation works. Notably, this means you can have a Dust that hits a range 4. Most people can't. It means that you can have a Grasp that hits a range 2. Most people can't. Certainly, most people can't do it when they're responding without having a boost in play.
Right. Kind of almost at will. That
Mhm.
generally requires some kind of setup.
Yep. Instead, you just go, oh man, I sure wish I had a speed 7 attack at range 2. Oh, actually, I do.
Oh, I do actually,
Um,
because I have a speed 7 attack and 2 spare force lying around.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so a lot of the things that you're going to do are going to be putting yourself in dominant positions. The opponent will try to squirm out of it, and you go, actually, no, you can't. Um, all right, so that's how the ability works. Let's take a look at the succeed mode. This is going to have shades of the one we just recorded a minute ago. 3-gauge exceed. When you exceed, draw 3. That is not a net positive. That's just like taking a change cards action from Gauge. But notably, it is just like taking a change cards action from Gauge.
And then you get a bonus on top of that for the rest of the game.
Yes, and now for the rest of the game, you have whenever you use this thing to give yourself maximum range, you also get +1 power.
Okay.
So this is one of those exceed modes that you're going to have. You should expect to exceed as Ramlethal.
Okay.
Because most characters, especially characters who spin force like you do, because you do, are going to go, when I sure need to reload my hands. Let's spin some Gauge and change cards. Well, great. Spin some Gauge to exceed. You have accomplished both of your goals.
At some point, you can kind of white out the rest of the text on this card and say, well, CC3 from Gauge, that sounds fine. Let's do that, and that's probably good enough. And oh, look, I get a cool bonus on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It is you will have your bonus for the rest of the game, and you will get a reload when you need it, because generally speaking, building 3-gauge and using your ability a few times as you do that, you'll probably want the reload.
You'll be kind of in a naturally depleted hand size by that point anyway, probably.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So D, harkening back to a lesson that we did a little while ago on Eno, where the Eno, and for people who have not seen the character, Eno also has a character ability that costs a force to do something unique, and then her exceed mode is the same action with extra power on top of it. And one of the things that you talked about quite a bit in the Eno guide is that ability, and whether you are getting value out of that ability, changes based on how often you're using it. You know, if you are using Eno's ability twice over the course of a game, your exceed mode might not be worth that 3-gauge. With Ramlethal, that sounds like that's less of a consideration because you're getting this reload on top. But do kind of similar considerations apply here? That if I'm anticipating,
it's still good to have it as early as possible.
Okay, and I'm getting more value out of it the more often I'm using this ability.
Okay. Right. And you are expecting to be using it. You shouldn't expect to use it every strike. That becomes exploitable, right? If you're throwing 2 force away every strike and you don't need to, then your opponent's going to eventually take advantage of it when you're out of resources or low on resources. Okay. And you won't stay out of resources for long because you have good reloads, but yeah, like throwing 2 force away every strike at the very least is giving information to your opponent about cards that you no longer have in your hands.
Okay.
And that will become a problem.
So I should expect, irrespective of what side of Ramlethal's mode I'm on, I should be expecting to use my ability often enough that I'm going to be getting value out of my exceed mode, but not all the time.
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. And
Sounds good.
two force is significant, but it's not going to break the bank. If you prepare, you draw 2 cards, that's probably 2 force. So it's kind of like you paid a turn to set something up, which is not that different from playing a boost. Right.
Sure. That makes sense.
You play a boost, you lose a card, you gain a card.
+1 power, +1 speed. I'm sorry, +1 power, +1 range during a strike is a pretty good boost for a turn. Yeah,
it is a fairly reasonable boost. And since you said speed, let me also note, for those who might not be familiar with how exceeds dynamics and fundamentals work, that range often is effectively speed.
Right.
Because range and speed are correlated in a way where at closer ranges, higher speed cards tend to be available. At longer ranges, they don't. Everybody has grasp, hits range 1, doesn't hit range 2, doesn't hit range 3, doesn't hit range 4. And then cross hits at ranges 1 and 2, but not 3 or 4. Slash hits at ranges 1, 2, and 3, but not 4. Dive hits at 4. So as you go out from range 1 to 4, your speeds decrease consistently.
Right.
This is called the speed curve. I'm mentioning it because it's very important to understand this as Ramlethal. That, yeah, at range 2, adding range to grasp means that now it outspeeds the fastest thing most people can do. At range 3, you add range to cross, outspeeds the fastest thing most people can do.
Right.
It lets you go up 1 on the curve for ranges 2 to 4.
Right. So unlike if you added +1 speed instead of +1 range to grasp, it would do something at range 1.
Right. It would be above curve at 1.
Right. Range makes it above curve by allowing it to hit at a point on the board in which the speed curve is lower.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep. And not coincidentally, you tend to like ranges 2 to 4 because that's where you can abuse this and lord range over your opponent.
Right.
That is like Ramlethal's favorite range is anywhere from 2 to 4 depending on the situation. She's actually not bad at 1 either for a few particular reasons. But 2 to 4 is where she can lord this advantage over her opponent.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which she likes doing. All right.
And how much of the game should I expect to be spending Exceeded? Like, it sounds like I'm gonna be getting there at some point. It is almost a formality because I want this reload so bad anyway. But is this the kind of thing that I should expect to get within the first few turns, or am I going to be spending most of the
Yeah.
early game into the mid game building to this?
It's gonna be relatively early. It's not that hard for you to get some gauge. You're a strive character. Even if your opponent doesn't let you have this, which they might, if you can boost this and the opponent doesn't strike, you can get some free gauge.
Right.
Chances are, if you're boosting this, you can hit them with something anyway,
Right.
because now you have extra guard. Also, the fact that you can use your basic ability, and they both have the same range bonus, to become above curve means that you can do things like play slash at range 4, and unless the opponent plays across, you're probably going to hit.
Right.
Like, you're good at making sure that you can land hits, which means that you're going to probably be able to get those first 3 gauge pretty reliably, and then exceed as soon as you're at that point. So like you should expect to spend all but the first few strikes in exceed mode, because once you have 3 cards in your gauge, in all likelihood, you don't have a full hand because you had to spin cards to do it.
Right.
And now you exceed.
Right. Okay. So for excuse me, for while we're talking about this kit, we should probably be evaluating it mostly as though we're doing it on this side.
Right.
Okay.
Like the range considerations are the same, but when there are power breakpoints that specifically care about your exceed mode, you're expecting to have access to them, just not right at the beginning of the game.
Makes sense. Okay.
All right. I will note other gauge generation, by the way. So faultless, your opponent can deny. But if you have the guard, then your opponent will have a harder time stopping you from hitting you with something else, or for hitting them with something else.
Right.
Area shift, they can't deny. If they get up close to you, if they're at range 1, you're like, okay, well, thanks for the gauge, I guess. Drag them into the corner. Now you have gauge. And you're at range 2, probably. Which is awesome. Or you're at range 1 in their corner, which is even worse for them. Anyway, this, you have to hit, but you're good at hitting. So it's bonus gauge.
Right. You can probably confirm this with some above curve option somewhere.
Right. And then lastly, good universal option. If you're not getting hit by an ignore armor attack, this attack will go to your gauge.
Right.
Like, you just have to not get stunned. So at ranges 1 and 4 or greater, you can play block, you'll get a gauge off of it. So yeah, lots of reliable ways to get gauge. One of which often unattractable, one of which often unstoppable.
Right. And even the other ones are not that hard to make use of.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so you shouldn't have too much difficulty getting those first few gauge, and then you will be spinning them probably as soon as possible. So you don't necessarily want to waste that draw 3. So if you are at 6 cards in hand, 7 cards in hands, exceeding might be something that you want to wait a turn for, so that you can actually get rid of some of your hands.
Right. You can get value out of that kicker and not have to discard down to your hand size limit. Right.
Yeah. Like it is still value to we call it filtering, where you pick up more cards than you can hold, and then you keep the best ones and you drop the worst ones.
Right.
So like there is still value in that, but a lot of playing Ramlethal is the resource game. It is figuring out how you can afford to use your ability as often as you need to use it, because you will need to use it a lot. It is very good to use it a lot. It's pretty expensive to use it a lot.
Yeah.
And when you care about resources as a numeric quantity, then filtering is much less good than actually drawing cards and keeping them.
Right.
All right, that all makes sense?
Yep, absolutely it does.
All right, so that's Ram. Let's talk about the kit. So I mentioned that range 2 to 4 is your favorite range. Let me point out firstly this card that has printed range 2 to 4 conveniently. Yep. This is it's a projectile technically. It also lies about being a projectile. This is a card that hits range 4, but it closes as an after effect. So instead of being a card that just sort of hits and now the opponent can't hit you back, it's a lot more like Dive or Slash,
right,
where it's going to move you closer.
In fact, sometimes I'm sorry to go ahead.
Spinning Force on Slash gets you something a lot like Bayonetta, where you have a range 4, speed 5, power approximately 4. depending on what they play.
Sets at range or lands you at range 2 and gains advantage. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
The difference is that you're doing a little bit less damage, but you didn't spend force on slash.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bayonetta in the big interaction that changes is that Bayonetta will often push people out of range of their counterattack. So if you're starting at 4 and they play sweep, they're not going to hit you back. If they play
Right.
focus, they will. But you'll get extra power in return.
Okay. So the thing that I was going to ask you is a lot of characters have what we call the move don't move mix up, where you can either be diving in or you can be hucking a fireball at them, and you sort of have that, but
You do have it, but this isn't the card.
Okay, but also this will, because it pushes. If you start at range 4, if you start from starting positions, it will move you in, but will still dodge a counter at one of the counter attacks that could be played.
Some counterattacks, yeah.
So
it narrows the mix up where it makes it harder for them to play against.
Okay, so it has some things in common with something like Hadoken, but not really. It's fulfilling a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and that purpose primarily is you are reliably hitting, you're gaining advantage, you're setting up a good range. This is going to go to your gauge, and you have another turn. So it's a solid opener. It's also great anywhere in the mid game. This push fewer than 2, by the way. I mentioned focus as like the obvious example. If they play focus, you can't be pushed or pulled, right. So they will not be pushed, and then you get plus power, but they're probably going to hit you back.
They're hitting you back. Yeah.
Yep. The other side of this is it doesn't matter if they play focus if they're standing here,
right?
Because now you push them, and while they're against the wall, they didn't get pushed. You're going to get bonus power.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to mention the power math in basically all of these. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 1 is only 6. This actually does not break sweep. So this does not hit the really important breakpoint we care about, where we combine this with your exceed ability and it goes up to something stupid.
Right.
And in order to hit that breakpoint, you need to also have one of these in play. Or delayed explosion, but we'll talk about it later.
And to be spending for your ability. So in order to do all that, that is quite a bit of an investment to have on curve break sweep. But sometimes on curve break sweep is pretty great.
On curve break sweep, gain advantage, potentially gain an extra gauge. That's really strong. Like you're getting what you pay for, and because of how you as a character work, it's often fine to just put badass into play and not cancel it. Mm-hmm. And look at the opponent and go, hey, now I have speed and I can have range whenever I want. Are you sure you want to strike enemy?
Okay, so Ramlethal sounds like she's actually in general just quite good on her opponent's turn.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a little bit rare for a Strive character where a lot of them are like they win extremely, extremely hard on their turn. Ram has some stuff that she can do when my opponent is in control.
Yeah, like what she wants to be doing is spending her turn to build resources to create an oppressive advantage at the ranges that she works at. The problem with this is that the opponent will then spend their turn going to a range where they get to play the game.
Okay.
And so we'll talk about your tools to deal with that situation. But like that is the risk, is that the opponent's not just going to strike into you going, oh, well, sure, I'll strike into you knowing I'm losing this strike.
Right.
Right. They're going to do something else. They're going to give themselves actual speed, which is better than your fake speed. They're going to move to range 1 where they have, actually strong attacks and you have normals and really mediocre attacks. Like your range 1 game is not great.
And not too much of a character ability outside of certain circumstances.
Right. Like if they initiate at range 1, you can give yourself extra power, but it's not going to change any breakpoints at all because your sweep doesn't stun their sweep if they're the ones who initiated.
Right. Yeah. You just are kind of banking on trading up at that point.
Yeah, and you're paying a lot to trade up.
Right. Right. Good point.
2 force for +1 power is not very good.
Right.
It's sometimes worth it if you're hitting a certain breakpoint. Like sweep with +1 power breaks the opponent's sweep, and that's generally worth having. But most other things are just like it's only worth it if you're hitting a breakpoint like that.
Right.
And if you are expecting to be slower than the opponents, then it's not generally going to be worth it because you're just talking about trading math, and yeah, that's just 2 force for +1 power. That's not very good.
Right. Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yes, Bayonetta. In some ways, like it's your kid in a nutshell. It's you're dominant at this range. You have the opponent can hit you back, but you're probably leveraging your advantage in some way. The boost is also what makes it kind of the kid in a nutshell, because the boost is basically your ability. You just add range to something. You can spend a gauge to cancel it, which means that you're spending 2 cards to strike with +1 max range. So your character ability. It's just that the cards come from one from hand, one from gauge, instead of 2 force from somewhere.
From anywhere, right?
Mhm. But in return, on hit, it goes to your gauge. So it can be viewed as a discount basic ability in a weird way. It is not a discount exceed ability. It doesn't give you power. But this also turns into a, f- a force multiplier. I'm going to say it anyway.
Yep.
Force multiplier, where instead of multiplying your force, it is plus 0 to 1 range, and then hey, you can still do this, right? So
Oh,
plus 0 to 2
sure.
range
Right, right. And that is,
attack.
I sure wish I had a. I sure wish I was exceed mode Axel for a turn and had a 7 speed
Mhm.
range 3 option, and
Yeah,
just chuck my opponent across the arena or something.
yeah, like yeah. Let me just boost this, and then spends 2 more force and strike with this. Or if you're standing at range 2 to 4 or 2 to 5, honestly, you can put this boost into play and tell your opponent to come at you because you are now kind of you're in most matchups you're controlling the mix-up at that point
Right,
where
because
they
you
can
still
choose
have
to
access to
play.
this on defense.
Yes, and so at range 2, well, sure, obviously you're threatening grasp, but even if they are out at range 5, well, you're actually threatening sweep and dust and slash.
Yeah,
Like you're threatening the entire range 2 mix up at range 5,
at range
which is
5,
ridiculous.
right? And most characters don't really have much to contest. Honestly, even like one side of that mix up sometimes at range 5. Some
Yeah.
characters don't have any
Mini,
tools at all out there.
yeah, some characters don't have anything at range 5. Mini will have a range 5 option or like a projectile or something like that.
Right,
Uh, and they'll often only be able to contest some of those things. So you're generally happy to stand there and then throw something awesome at them.
right,
Um, but yeah, but the pattern is often going to be do something to puff yourself up and make yourself look big, like this, or any one of a number of other. Okay, not a number. Honestly, it's a handful. Um, or rather than a stat boost, the other example is you just establish range 2 to 4.
and
That
say
also
hit
is a form.
and
Yeah,
say hit me, right?
yeah. So like yeah, so there's a general pattern in Exceed where actually this is just a fighting game thing, right? You're both jockeying for an advantage. We call that neutral. One person obtains an advantage. The other person is now being pressured, right? The way that you pressure is that you are at range 2 to 5 usually, but especially 2 to 4, and you have anything in play. Um, that's it.
Right,
Like if so, Potemkin by being at range 1 is pressuring you because he's
right,
Potemkin.
right,
Ramlethal by being at range 2 is pressuring you because she's Ramlethal.
right. And so
Um,
so you put anything down on top of that, and you are telling your opponent like you need to deal with this now. And
yep,
and not only that, by putting any of these things down, dealing with whatever it is you're threatening just got a lot harder and a lot more high risk because you have this ability to do things on defense.
right. And most of the things that you put down, and so that's why these are the most dominant in terms of you're gonna like these for their stats. But most of the tools in your kits, most of the boosts in your kit, I should say, are things that are more about your resource engine because it's going to be okay. I'm at 2 to 4. I'm already advantaged. Like I'm already exerting pressure because I'm Ramlethal, and existing at range 2 to 4 makes me like a genuine threat
Right,
and a really annoying mix-up character. So because I know that, I can afford to use things like this boost, build my hands, and threaten to do something even more annoying, where now my grasp pushes 3, and if they go to the wall, it's a 5 or 6 power, depending if I'm in scene mode.
oh,
Um,
because you can stack your hit triggers.
exactly.
Okay,
Um, but yeah, so I'll go through the resource tools after I go through the attacks.
sure.
But yeah, like you pressure by being at 2 to 4, 2 to 5, and then putting something else down is intensifying your pressure in a very dramatic way, and or it is building up your resources so that you can afford to maintain your pressure the next strike afterward.
Right,
Because if your opponent is also comfortable at range 2 to 4 for whatever reason, because they're that kind of character, and you're spending 2 force every strike and they're not, you will eventually have a problem.
sure.
Like you do need to pay attention to how many resources you have and what boosts you have in play, and so leveraging things to compete with other people at their favorite ranges is relevant when their favorite ranges are often overlapping with yours. Um, but yeah, as an important aspect of that I'm going to call out specifically, um, this is by far your most cost-effective speed 7 option. And if both copies of Grasp are in your discard pile or Gauge or if both copies of Grasp are unavailable to you as an attack, your opponent knows that you cannot hit them with range 2 Grasp.
Right.
You would rather that not be the case.
Being
Keep
able to
one Grasp alive.
hold that over your opponent's head, because I honestly like range 2 grasp in terms of its ability to dodge attacks and things like that. Honestly, feels a lot like cross.
It is, yeah.
With different positioning requirements, and it's even faster. So maintaining the threat of cross into your opponent's big scary mid speeds makes them hesitant to throw it out. Grasp does that too.
Yeah, like they have to if they want to initiate into you, they have to take focus as an initiating option, which most people will not do, at
Right.
range 2, which most people will not do.
Right.
Um, and go, yeah, sometimes I guess I have to initiate with focus because otherwise I'm just going to lose to grasp.
Right. Or
And you want
I have some kind of like range 1 to 4 guarded option or something.
Mhm, right, and you want them to have to be doing that. You want them to be having to play against it the entire game.
Right.
Like put the fear of I have access to this option into their head without ever needing to use it. Ideally, um, like use it use it sometimes. They have to know that you will use it. Use it when it's the thing that wins because sure it wins. But letting the second copy go down means that you will need to get it back.
Right.
Um, which you can, by the way. We'll talk more about that in a minute.
Sounds good.
All right. So going back through attacks, we talked about Bayonetta. So speed 5 at range 4 is also like a good fast opener. It beats a lot of people's openers, or if you're initiating especially, it will often let you land a hit. Can be a little annoying if they cross out, but good news, if they cross out, you still have advantage, and you're at range 4.
Oh, it's
Um,
advantage is an after effect. You don't even have to hit. Okay.
Yep. That is expressly intended for this particular card, where if they evade you, that's okay. You are still closing and gaining advantage.
Right. And now they're probably cornered if you're doing it from opening positions. That's probably good for you as well.
That is generally very good for you and very bad for them, yeah.
Right. Okay.
If anyone has tried to backdash against Ramlethal throwing her swords at you and they run to the wall, they know what that's like. It's not a good idea.
Yes.
So Bayonetta, therefore, is a reasonable opener in almost all cases. It's also great once you get later in the game and they are backed up against the wall and you can start to make this part of a much scarier set of mix-ups.
Right. Now you can you don't need to run into their focus to get your plus power rider on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. So let's talk about now the don't move. This is your. It's a little weird to call it a projectile, but from opening positions, it does serve the function of being the don't move side of the mix-up, where you're saying, am I going to move closer and you can trade with focus, or am I going to play this and your focus gets laughed at?
Right.
Because what this does is it hits at range 1 to 4, and then on hit you close or retreat 1, so you're going to be able to evade any counterattack. Well, not any, but you'll evade the normals at least.
The majority of them, definitely.
Yeah. In most cases, you're going, okay, now I'm at range 3 or 5. Well, if they played a sweep, then I don't go to 3. And if they played focus, then I probably will go to 3, actually.
Right, because
it also gives you an extra gauge on hit, which is very nice.
So you have thing you go to where your hand can threaten. That's probably going to be range 3 over range 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in most cases, yeah. Like
okay.
5 is something that you can do. Often it takes more resources because it requires you to have a Brigadier Sword out.
Right.
3 is something that you can do trivially and will always have access to.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So outside of opening positions, is this still an important consideration, or is this mostly a cover for Bayonetta?
So I'll say it's mostly a cover, but it's also a cover later in the game when you're looking at the normals mix up. If it's okay, I could play slash to be on curve just to beat sweep, or sweep to prevent them from meaningfully doing something in the middle to come back at me, or doing something that comes back at me.
Right.
This is your other dust, where at range 3, it still evades most things. It is a mid speed that gets you extra value. It doesn't stun things generally, but it evades and it gives you extra gauge, which is just as good a reward for you as the opponent getting stunned.
And you've made your opponent whiff a sweep by stepping out of range. That sounds great as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it is part of your range 3 to 4 mix up, and especially later in the game when that becomes a thing. It's also a thing that you can just sort of hold on to and wait for if you manage to set up range 5 and then have an unreactable aggresso where, in this board state, most people just can't do anything but get hit by it.
What are you doing about this other than like maybe they have a strong enough projectile to armor through?
Yeah. If they are a projectile character, then they very well might be able to deal with this, because a lot of like actual projectile characters will often have things that are better than this as a projectile. This is only 3D printed guard on it. Hadouken does beat this. Like reused projectile does beat this.
Yeah. So look at their kit before you try to set this up. But this might just be damage and gauge.
Yeah, it might just be free.
Okay.
Now, if you are playing as projectile character, then you'll be glad that you have this card. This is a speed 6 card that closes 2, so it's a range 1 to 3, speed 6, does basically no damage. Two is a very small number, and 2+1 is still a very small number. It's not
Right.
super great. And on hit it pushes 1, and that's nice because you like setting up range 2. That's good. But the big value here is it's speed 6, it closes 2. So somebody who is trying to throw a projectile at you from many ranges, you can just duck in and be like,
Right.
actually, I'm now in your face.
Right.
Um, this is particularly notable as you are Ramlethal, so this is a valid defensive option at range 4, where you have a range 4 speed 6 button that you can throw in defense and just come in and hit them.
And hit them. Move out. Get yourself some gauge. Dodge their attack. And I mean,
Yeah, that's if you spend.
we
Mhm.
frequently talk about useful defensive buttons at range 3 with 6 speed that move you or move the opponent somehow.
Mhm.
The kind of tidal whirl shape.
Mhm.
There's something kind of similar going on here, except you can do it from range 4 because you're Ramlethal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not as safe as some of those. It is something that will just walk into a sweep and be sad.
Right.
It will walk into a dust even and be sad. It's one of those cards that dust can actually be a counterattack against.
Right.
Because it will always set up range 2 or 3 depending on where you start.
Right.
But it's also fine to just play it as one card where you're going, well, I just want to make sure that I'm faster than them, keeping them honest, preventing them from throwing their own dive or slash, whatever into me. I'll duck in. I'll probably hit them. Unless they initiated with cross, right? I'm going to come in and hit them. So I prefer to play this at range 3, but it's important that you have it at range 4.
Okay.
Um,
That makes sense.
and I will often not bother initiating with it ever. This is a asterisk. If my opponent has a speed 6 projectile of their own, if they have their
I,
own speed 6, 3 to 4 thing,
Again,
like Ryu.
Ryu is an oddly good example of a lot of the things we're talking about here.
Yeah, he does in fact have a range 3 to 6, speed 6 attack.
Yep.
So it's like, well, if they have that, then yeah, you might well have to initiate with this just to make sure that's not
Yep.
gonna ruin your day.
Right. Sure. That makes
But
sense.
for most characters, you can just save it for defense. It's also viable to just save both copies, and then you have a speed 7 at range 3, which almost nobody can do anything about.
Yeah,
Um,
that's quite rare to be able to contest that.
mhm. All right. I guess I will actually mention at going uncustomarily out of order. Speaking of speed 7 at range 3, this is an ultra. 3 gauge is pretty expensive. And the only remarkable thing about this stat line is that it is a speed 7 attack that hits a range 2.
Right.
Generally, the reason that this is worth 3 gauge is because you needed a speed 7 attack that hits at range 3.
You have a speed 7 attack that hits at range 2, and it doesn't cost any gauge.
Exactly. So earlier when I mentioned Grasp, I said it was not. I didn't say it was the best. I said it was the most cost effective.
Right.
Because Mortamato is expensive.
Right.
It is a if you needed a speed 7 at range 2 and you're out of grasps, you can do it. But it's mostly if you need it at range 3, where you go, okay, they are not prepared for me hitting this speed at this range. And as an additional benefit, with your exceed ability, it will stun dust. Becomes 5 power.
Sure. Okay.
Um,
Outside of those considerations, though, like frequently speed 6 at range 3 is enough for what you're trying to do, or although I mean stunning dust actually is relevant given what you just said about Daro.
yeah, stunning dust is relevant, but yeah, in most cases, the most significant property of this card is not these stats. It is the amount of force it's worth.
Sure. Yeah, oh, look, my character ability costs 2 force. Here's an
This is 2
excellent source
force.
of it. Right.
Yep. I'll talk about the boost later. The boost is extremely significant, but Mortabato is a great card to just pitch 2 force on early game, where it's okay, I need my ability, and I don't want to discard 2 good options.
Right.
I'll discard this card that if I need it at all, I'm going to need it much later.
Right.
Like for at least the first half of the game, you're assuming that this card is 2 force.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Having talked about your reversals, here, this can be a reversal, but it generally isn't. So just like Slash, this is a speed 5 attack that hits at range 3. You're Ramlethal, so maybe it's a speed 5 attack that hits at range 4, right? 4. There we go. Because close 2, and then if you extend the range, it goes out to range 2. On hits, much like this card, it gives you a nice little benefit. You draw 2, and then you add a card from hand to gauge, so you're basically drawing a card and gaining a gauge. You just have some control over which card it is. So a little bit of extra gauge building on each of these makes them reasonably rewarding. This does not gain advantage like Slash, and it does not reposition like this one. So it has it is a side grade slash where similar speed, similar movement, similar range, different reward. Because of that, if you're going to use one of them on defense, make it this one.
You don't care about the advantage on defense anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you're like, okay, I want to respond to at range 4 with a speed 5 attack, and I don't have my Bayonetta rounds, sure. Yeah. I'll do this.
Okay.
Like
I get you. It's Mega Fist. It's Potemkin's you said similar thing. Economic reward on defense, advantage on offense.
yeah. You want to initiate with things that gain advantage, and then if you need this stat line, but you don't need advantage, hey look,
Right.
it's that stat line.
Right.
Slightly less damage. Usually that doesn't matter. The significance of 3 is that it doesn't break dust even with plus power.
Right. And if you're spending for your ability to hit with this at range 4, you're at least subsidizing it with the hit effect to draw some cards back. But
exactly,
now it's not. I mean, you could still just do that with dust as well, or rather slash as well. So it's still a side grade there.
Yeah, but slash doesn't subsidize, right? And if you're defending, especially, it's just I hit you, but I paid 2 cards instead of I hit you, I paid 2 cards and I got 2 cards, one in hand, one engaged.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Okay.
So I like Aralumo as a occasional defensive tool at range 4. More commonly, it's a filler in my offense where I'm going, okay, I need a few resources. I need a little extra gauge. I'm holding my slash because I'm probably holding for an EX. Holding for EX is a thing that Ramlethal will do. I'll talk more about that later.
Okay.
This is solid. Like it'll come in. It will give me something. It's probably not going to stun anything. But if I was looking to stun things, I would be playing a different attack, right?
Right.
Yeah. Paralymo. All right, and then so I've talked about your slash. I've talked about where's sweep. Here's sweep. That's not sweep. That is sweep. I meant to say a different word. Anyway, I talked about your dust.
Right. You're kind of range 3, guarded 3 speed, mid speed kind of thing.
Yeah. All right. Here's your sweep.
Here's my sweep. Okay.
Now you may notice, sweep has 6 printed power. This has 4 printed power.
Yep.
Sweep has range 1 to 3. This has range 1 to 2.
Right.
Sweep has 6 guard. This has 5 guard.
Right.
You may think that this means sweep is better. You're right. Yes, sweep is better.
Okay.
If everybody had a special as good as sweep, everybody would have an insanely good special.
Very true. Sweep is incredibly strong.
These are cards with significant overlap, so that if you need this role, if you need to play a slow thing with guard that hits at a reasonable amount of ranges, you have redundancy.
Right.
They're not equally good.
Right. But the existence of this card means that badass might be more online for you in some cases or something.
Yeah, it means that, once you're out of focuses and you've gotten out of both sweeps, you're not out of counterattacks even then.
Right. Okay.
Like you can play your badass and not be giving up your last copy of a counterattack because you still have Sabrubata.
Right.
Now this is unreliable on defense, so it's mostly for when you're offensively pressuring with counterattacks. Because on defense, if they played a sweep, you're just stunned.
Right.
And that's real sad.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, you really, really don't you don't want to lose the sweep ever, but it's probably going to happen. You're going to trade down on this card sometimes in a game. You really don't want to lose clean to sweep.
Yes. It's they got immense value. And it cost them nothing. That is really bad.
Yeah.
Usually sweep wins by trading up. You don't want it to win clean.
Right.
Unless it's your sweep, then it's fine. But anyway.
Yeah. Then you're working to make it. That's what you said. Like they spent nothing in order to make sweep win clean, because that is a going concern. We love to do that with our characters. You needed to put badass on it or let's rock on it. You needed to do something or cancel it into something.
Pay 2 force.
Yeah, you needed something to make that happen. If you just let them do it for free, you're doing all of their work for them.
Yep. So generally, you don't want to be responding with Sabrubata except in very niche situations.
Okay.
And it also kind of requires your ability in order to even hit, like, in many board states, beating Grasp with this requires you to sit on your ability, because if they can push you 2 spaces, it whiffs.
Right.
Which is not very good. So if you're actually playing this at range 1, you're probably using your ability because it's not all that great otherwise. I will more commonly include this when I'm pressuring. Again, for me, this is like an offensive pressure card where in my offense at range 2 and 3, this is a thing that's coming in where my opponent has their back to the wall. They are expecting me to be throwing Bayonetto, but they're afraid of Dust. Now I have Subrabato, and it's 1 extra sweep. And with my ability in this position, that is 7 power. That is as much damage as sweep.
That's good enough to be sweep.
Yep. So like if you're looking at this going, it is definitely worse than sweep. Find the way that makes it as good as sweep, which is when you're initiating, and you can gain this power bonus.
Right.
And now it's worth playing.
Makes sense. And
it doesn't
even,
make you discard a card; it makes you draw a card. But
even otherwise, like less good sweep is, as you said, filler offense is fine.
Still, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it provides some redundancy, so that you have, a special that is part of that role to make sure that and by the way, part of the reason redundancy is important. The characters who usually care about redundancy are the grapplers, the characters who are intensely mix-up oriented.
Oh, sure.
The reason you care about redundancy so much is because you need to throw cards away. And you don't want to look at a hand of cards and go, well, if I throw this away, I'm losing my last copy of this side of the mix-up.
Okay.
Like you care about redundancy in large part because you can go, okay, it's fine to throw away my last Dust because I'm not out of mid speeds. It's fine to throw away my last Slash because I'm definitely not out of speed 5s.
Right. You might still have to kind of adjust your play patterns a little bit based on the kit, or if I'm out of Dusts now, I got to stay out of range 2 for these mid speeds, for these counterattacks, because this is really a mid speed at range 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll still have to make adjustments, but it's a thing where, well, at range 2, you do have another mid speed.
True.
I wasn't necessarily going to make a point of that.
And
dive hits at range 2.
Dive hits at range 2 with your character ability. Fair point. You can also just generally grasp out of the way of some of the dangerous counterattacks. Focus would still hit. So this actually speaks to your point even more, that you do have a lot of ways out based on what you have left can probably be made to work, which means that you are more free to spend force.
Yeah, you're more free to spend things because it's not gonna kill you for having spent the wrong card early because you have other cards that you can use to fill the gap later.
I gotcha. Okay.
Like Ramlethal, like resources are important. This is by no means the most punishing resource-oriented character. This is by no means the character who is going to cause you to lose the game because you spent this special instead of that special.
Right. You're not going to watch the VOD of your tournament game later and have to rewind back to turn 2 when you spent the wrong card, and that's why you lost the game.
Yeah. And like there's enough leeway and flexibility in adjusting what you're doing after you have spent things that it's not super punishing. Like
okay.
I'm currently of the opinion that she's kind of the easiest character of this type that is throwing force around a lot in Exceed. There's only half a dozen or so that are really this intense on that, but that's still significant claim.
Right. That makes sense. A lot of times, D, and I think this may be a slightly premature segue because we might not be done talking about attacks yet, but frequently redundancy matters also because, losing both copies of Sweep means I'm losing both copies of Badass as well. Do I have that kind of redundancy in my boosts, or is that sometimes why I'm preserving an option over another option?
You do not have that kind of redundancy, yeah. So Badass is the only Badass you have. Okay. Your boosts are mostly the engine components. So I mentioned that Brigadier Sword is kind of a special case because it can stack with your ability. But in many cases, it's just going to be a substitute for your ability.
Okay.
And in that regard, you have your ability, right? Like, it's you don't need Brigadier Sword if you only need +1 maximum range. You use Brigadier Sword if you need more than +1 maximum range.
Right.
Generally speaking. Yeah, let's go through boosts. There's an attack we haven't talked about. That's fine. We'll come back to that because we need it. It's part of resource dynamics.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep. All right. So let's see. Where are all your stat boosts that don't do anything else on them? Cool. Found it. That's the one. All right. Now let's look at all the other boosts. So I mentioned Delayed Explosion earlier. This is a card that says now draw 2. So normally, if you want to get resources on your turn, you are going to prepare or change cards. Prepare is draw 2 cards. It's the easiest net gain where you're just going up 2 if you don't care what the things are or if you don't need a lot of them.
Right.
This is draw 2 and then draw for end of turn, so draw 3. So it's just better than prepare. It is at baseline a good way to build up a larger hands. Now you're costing a card, but that like you're seeing more new cards and you're I'm describing the math badly.
No, that makes sense. So like pretending that there's no hit effect on this, the raw force that is coming into your hand, the net change of force in your hand is the same.
It's the same as prepare, but you're seeing more new cards.
You're seeing more cards. You have the ability to filter through your deck faster to get something that you might need.
Right, and this is often a card. This is often an attack that you don't particularly need. Stat line mediocre.
Right.
And as I talked about before, has redundancy. Right. If you already have other speed 5 things that hit at range 4, like Slash and Bayonetto, okay, well you can boost this one.
Right.
There's no reason that you need to save this particular card. As an attack, it doesn't do anything extraordinary. Even when EX, and you're kind of secretly a character who cares about EXs because of some of your effects in particular. This is not an attack that does anything really amazing when it's EX. It goes up to speed 6, and that's good, but so does Slash.
Yep.
It doesn't hit any important breakpoints other than that one. So yeah, delayed explosion, good boost. Mainly, you use it for that resource bump. You're like, okay, I need resources. I'll boost this, and also incidentally have this upgraded to my next attack where I have a hit effect that might give me +2 power or might let me reposition the opponents.
Right.
So that and ordering hit triggers, right, means that if we're in this situation, so you have that boost in play, and you play Grasp, then you can hit pull, then hit push, and now you have a 5 power Grasp.
Right.
Yep. So be aware that when you have the multiple triggers of the same timing, like hits or before or after, you do them in the order of your choice. That matters a lot for delayed explosion, in particular.
Right. Having a push 1 even outside of a corner situation also means that like in some circumstances, like we were talking about how Ordono is a mid speed because you can back up. Can you kind of make some things into mid speeds at certain ranges with just the addition of a push 1 effect?
In theory, you can. Most of the stuff that you would like your specials that you would want to upgrade are like broadly going to already have some property. So Sabrabado has a push 1 on it. Bayonetto closes, Zaro closes, Aralumo closes, and so it's harder to make these function as mid speeds just because they are going to tend to make you come in. There are 2 big reasons that having the push is nice even if you're not getting the power bonus. One is it means that your Grasp beats Sweep at range 1.
Yes.
Because you can push 3 total.
Yep.
And that's an important interaction. The other really, really big reason this matters, if you have this in play, your opponent strikes, you respond, unless they play, they're probably not playing focus because they don't want to give you +2 power.
Right.
But so if they don't play focus, then you are probably pushing them out, and now it's your turn and you're not at range 1 anymore. And that's great.
Okay.
You love that.
Yeah. So it pressures them into striking you, but because they're striking you, you have positional ability on your opponent's turn. That's everything you want in life.
Yeah, like you'll have the next turn, and you're making sure that they're not going to be at range 1 as of that next turn.
Okay, gotcha. And as you started this conversation about this boost with like, you really care more about the resources than the push effect. So everything that we just said is kind of a bonus on top.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Like it, if you want to prepare, well, this is probably just better in most cases.
Yeah.
And by the way, because of the way because it's so good at range 1 on defense, it is no coincidence that you will very commonly be pairing this with focus. It is the only thing that you can do with it, but it is a super reliable thing that says, this is probably happening, and if they're evading, they're probably doing it with something like cross, which means that they're at a range that I can exploit anyway.
So they've managed to push themselves by retreating.
Yeah, and you're like, all right, cool, that's fine. Like most characters, you like playing focus at range 1, and it is a very solid thing to stable delayed explosion onto.
Okay, so the kind of the delayed explosion mix up is grasp focus in most cases.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you would
Grasp
be
is your fast button. Yeah.
doing the hit push is most valuable at range 1. Um, the resources are valuable when you need resources. That's probably why you're actually playing the card.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Like play for the resources. Take advantage of the hit effect any way you can. Don't expect to get a ton of value off this hit effect, but it's nice.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Speaking of drawing 2 cards, impose. Close 1, draw 2. Cancelable.
Yes.
That's important. So close 1, draw 2 is interesting because you aren't really a range 1 character, right? You don't necessarily want to go from 2 to 1. However, you are more than happy to go from 4 to 3 or from 3 to 2 in many cases, depending on what
Right.
exactly your hand looks like.
Right.
If you're already at 1, it can also be totally fine to just boost this, draw 2, and then decide if you want to cancel.
Right.
Right. That's the same math here applied, but my rider, my extra effect is not the hit effect. It is, and I may spend a gauge to take another action if these 2 cards made me decide I want to take another action.
Sure. Okay. And similar to Error Lumo, Cyberbato, it's a sweep like, it's kind of a mediocre sweep like. You might need it, but it's also not a card that you are like holding on to.
Yeah, it's not a card you're crouching on. It is a thing. I will say with the caveat, Error Lumo, there's no reason to save for the EX. There's very little reason to save for the EX. Cyberbato is a monstrous EX.
Okay.
If you can play EX, then it is for most purposes EX sweep, and EX
Right.
sweep is really good.
It's real good. Yeah.
Because it turns into, with character ability, like 1 to 3, generally about 7 or 8 power, depending.
Right.
Like it will stun sweep or focus depending on what they play.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so if I have the choice between I just need some reloads, probably look at delayed explosion first. But if I need cancelable reload, or the option of cancelable reload, impose is quite good.
Yeah. The no substitute for impose if you need the cancelable reload. And if you actually benefit from closing, then by all means that's just better.
Right.
From
Okay.
from 5 down to range 3, the closing is good.
Okay.
It's just that if we're at range 1, then I would prefer delayed explosion because that hit effect is probably going to be more valuable. But maybe I need the cancelable, or maybe
Right.
I just don't have Error Lumo in hand, right?
Right. Makes sense.
Like it's fairly common for me, in my experience, to late in the game boost Cyberbato, cancel, boost Cyberbato, cancel, do something. Because I was holding EX Cyberbato,
Right.
but I have decided that now at range 1, I want to, instead of playing EX Cyberbato, draw 4 cards, spin 2 gauge, take another action. But yeah.
Makes sense.
All right. So that is kind of a cool neutral-ish tool where you can, it's a resource tool. You can use it in any of the situations I mentioned. So it's perfectly good at ranges 1 up to 5, although I probably wouldn't play it much at 2.
Right.
All right. We haven't drawn enough cards yet. Here, have more cards.
Oh wow. Okay. So this is like a super change cards.
Yes, it's very efficient. So it gives you +4 guard to start.
Wait a minute, D. D, that's the name of the boost.
You're right. Well, no, it's not. The boost is efficient. I said it was very efficient.
Oh, the EX version then. If you have 2 copies in hand, then it's very efficient.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess
turn
so.
after turn.
All right. So it gives you +4 guard, which is a familiar number from Faultless Defense over here.
Right.
4 is a good number. It's things that can beat 4 guard matter because they can beat 4 guard. 4 guard is a common guard number, and it's a perfectly good guard number for that reason.
Sure.
Now spend up to 2 force. For each 4 spent, draw 2. Well, if you take a change cards action and pay 2 force, you are drawing 2 + 1.
Yep.
If you do this and pay 2 force, you've discarded this, so we'll count that. So you paid 3 force, but you're drawing 5.
Sure.
That's better. That's noticeably better.
Yeah.
And it's also has the usual benefit of change cards, where you may not be getting as great a numeric advantage. Well, in this case, you are, but you may not be getting a great numeric advantage, but you are seeing more new cards. And if the cards you had weren't serving your purpose, the new cards will serve it better.
Right. Okay.
So this boost is phenomenal. Like this is an excellent resource bump that you can play,
Right.
especially because this is an attack that is like shines the most when you can do it unreactively at range 4 or 5. Any closer than that, and the 4 guard starts to actually be pretty useful, where now you can play an extremely safe Slash or Error Lumo or whatever.
Sure.
It also shines with itself, not coincidentally, where a 7 guard Aggresso Ordono is probably hitting. But then you have given up the second copy, which is not always worth it.
Right, makes sense. And Faultless Defense is still cancelable, so you have reason to play both.
Yeah, they are different.
Yeah, okay,
They're
but
different.
it's not
If
a
you
strict
if you
upgrade
want to
or
do Pulse for
anything.
Guard now Strike, this ain't that.
Right, sure.
Like all of these have you are probably playing them for their resource benefits, and then look at the other effects and decide if you need it for some other reason.
Right.
But yeah, it is kind of your default reload because it is, well, it's really, really good.
Right.
Gives you more cards than the others, at least more cards at once. All right. Not cutting your exceed action, which is a one-time reload, so not as worthwhile.
Sure. And even
All
that
right.
is costing you gauge, right? You're getting something that you wanted anyway, but like it is still a resource resource conversion.
Yes, yeah, a conversion, not a actual improvements. Whereas this is efficient.
Right.
All right. We'll talk about the last two boosts last. Let's talk about these two. So these both have hit add to gauge, which is important because remembering that they will add themselves to gauge is very much part of the consideration of when and how you're going to play these. So Brigadier Sword, I said, pretty much great to play all the time is at range 2 to 5. Whether you cancel it is, can you afford to cancel it right? Or sorry, do you need to cancel it right now?
Right.
Or would you rather leave it in play so that it becomes gauge positive instead of gauge neutral?
Right, sure.
And then Diva of Despair, you will often cancel. And part of the reason for that is canceling this with a non-ultra takes a non-ultra out of your gauge and it puts an ultra into your gauge when you hit.
Right.
So you're up 1 force from that, and you can pay gauge from force just like everybody else, or pay force from gauge. Pay force from gauge. Excuse me.
Sure.
Just like everybody else. So having 2 force in your gauge is nice. Also, push 2 cancel is by default a very useful effect, right?
Oh yeah.
It is a everybody in Strive has this, but they much prefer to drag people past them because that gives them gauge. The push 2 cancel is the very expensive version of area shift.
Yeah.
Cancel range I don't want. So,
cancelable movement of any kind, really. Like you were excited about impose close 1 cancelable on a character who generally doesn't want to be closing in. Cancelable movement that you want anyway sounds amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. We're at the range that I at least want to be at.
Yep.
Oh, hold on.
No, we're not.
Now we're not.
Yeah.
And it can be deadly in situations where your opponents, you were here, you've moved over them by some means or mechanism, and they've dragged you back toward them, and now you can push them, and now they're back to the wall, and now even if you're not striking, you can put this into play.
Yep.
And they're looking down the barrel of a shotgun. Like this is horrifying.
Yep.
So I will usually cancel into strike, but if this creates such a dominant position that you can safely go directly into a reload, it's perfectly fine to go into one of these other boosts and just say, I'm lording this over you. I'm holding my hand against your forehead. You are not doing anything that you want to be doing right now.
Yep, makes sense. I love that. Yeah. I love that image, by the way, especially the idea of like her not hitting you with the giant swords, just holding them out, and you're like windmilling in front of her.
Oh yeah, well look at how her hand is out.
It's
definitely what she's doing.
That's definitely an older sibling pose.
Yep, that is the image.
Yep, perfect.
All right, and then so that this is phenomenal for its now effect, and the hit effect is what generally makes it worthwhile to cancel because you're going to be, force positive on doing that.
Right.
Whereas it's more of a consideration of Brigadier Sword. All right, we now have to talk about the attack we haven't talked about and the boost we haven't talked about.
Yes.
The attack will be easy. Calvados, 1 gauge. That is very, very cheap for an ultra. Most ultras are not 1 gauge.
Yep.
And we've seen that you have a little gauge generation, and also you are a Strive character. You're good at hitting. You'll probably have 1 gauge at some point. Pretty hard to believe you wouldn't.
I can imagine, yeah, you would.
Yep. All right. By the way, it's not 1 gauge, but we'll come back to that. So range 1 to 5. Cool.
Yep.
It's a lot of board. Since you're Ramlethal, it might well be 1 to 6.
Yep.
Power 4, meh. Speed 1, meh. Armor 1, guard 5. Okay, well that explains the speed 1, right?
Sure.
Yeah, like it's going off. Your opponent is almost certainly not stunning it unless you decided to play it in the range of dust and they got stunned. hit push 2, and then this after effect, if you initiated, you add a card from your discard pile to your gauge.
Oh, so
So
this
it's actually
isn't
0 gauge.
yeah, and yeah, so you're basically you need a gauge here, but by the end of the strike, you're gauge positive.
Yeah, you'll have 2 gauge, assuming that you initiate it.
Right.
Yeah, which that is the main decision on this card is with this stat line, that is an extremely stable defensive stat line. Are you going to reserve it for when you need it to defend with, or are you going to initiate it when you actually want to play it?
Sure.
Because it is far better to initiate it because of how much you care about your resource engine. But sometimes you need a range 1 to 6 attack with sweep like defensive stats. That's pretty good.
Right.
There is no substitute for that if you're actually at range 6. Yeah. But yeah, generally initiate. Breakpoint wise, power's not going to do anything to this, right? Before going to 5, no big deal.
Right. Not at speed 1, certainly.
Yeah, not at speed 1. But this is a very reliable way to convert this because you have 2 push effects here. Depending on where you are on the board, you'll probably be able to push them 2 and then push them 1 and then gain power off of this.
Sure.
Which is nice. Oh, actually, I guess I should have also mentioned the other kind of canonical delayed explosion is Bayonetta, right? So the problem with this is that you probably only get one of them. It's just that if they are here, then you push 2, they were pushed fewer than 2.
Right.
Then you push 1, they were pushed fewer than 1.
Push fewer than 1, so you get both.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you end up with an 8 power Bayonetta.
Yep.
Which is not a reasonable number of power.
No, yeah, at speed 5, that's on curve breaks focus. That seems pretty good.
Yeah. But so this by the way is the kind of is these things are the reasons the opponent is going to be cautious about the corner. That like Sabrabato I is my personal favorite, but the fact that you have one that is speed 5 that also can do an insane amount of damage is what's going to keep people on their toes
away from the corner in the first place. And if they're spending all of their resources getting away from the corner, you can probably exploit that.
Yep. Shove them back or just hit them when they're in the mid range where you can do whatever you want.
Right.
Lots of cool stuff. All right. Yeah, so Calvados, it's a weird ultra because it is definitely kind of more of an engine resource game ultra than it is an actual attack. As an ultra, its stats are mediocre, but it gives you an extra gauge, and that is a huge part of the value. It also goes gauge on hit, and again, 2 force engage is 2 force.
It's 2 force, right? So you're not really even losing it. So in terms of evaluating the attack versus the boost, it's almost like, do you want to be striking during it? Because they kind of do a similar thing.
Mm-hmm. They'll both get the opponent off of you.
The push effect happening beforehand and then being able to cancel into it is awesome. But Calvados, like, if what you care about is your resource engine, this is probably going to hit. You were probably going to hit with the thing you canceled into. Similar things are happening to your resources in both cases.
Mm-hmm. You're ending up with Calvados engaged no matter which way you play this from your hands, and that is very much intended. That this is helping to stem the flow of resources out of your engine. Where it's 2 force and it's probably ending up in your gauge either way you play it.
Right.
And then maybe it's giving you extra gauge, or maybe it's enabling you to hit with something else, which then in turn will go to gauge.
Right.
So yeah, in both cases you will probably get a total of 2 cards engaged. It's just that if you cancel, you also had to spend 1.
Right. Sure.
Well, I guess you had to spend 1 for this anyway. Yeah. Resource button. All right. Let's go about us. All right. We've just been talking a lot about how we might be putting things in your gauge, right? And especially like put a card from your discard pile into your gauge.
Yep.
So by default, right? You read this and you go, okay, add a card from your discard pile to your gauge. That's any card you want. So look for your ultras. Ultras are 2 force. Put 2 force in your gauge. Now you have 2 more force in your gauge.
Sure. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Earlier in the game, you discarded Mortabato as 2 force. Now you can put it back in your gauge. And now you have it as 2 force again. Cool. That is what you should do by default with this. Unless you're about to play this boost.
Whoa. Whoa, okay. Can you tell that I didn't look at Ramlethal's kit before we started this lesson, D?
Yeah, this is one of the most dramatic boosts in the season.
Wow.
One of the flashiest, at least. Whatever is in your gauge, all the cards in your gauge, could be 1 card, could be 7. Who knows?
Sure
you tell me.
Yep.
they're in your hand now. By the way, hand size rules. The hand size is 7, but it's only checked in a specific step. This is after you draw at the end of your turn. So if you have,
don't draw.
Mhm.
So punch them instead.
Yeah, do something else. Yeah, so you start with, let's say, 5 cards. You pick up 5 cards.
Right.
Well, sorry, you go down to 4 and then you pick up 5. You now have 9 cards in your hands. But you take another action, which means your turn isn't over, which means you are not discarding.
Yep.
Well, with 9 cards in hands, you are not, importantly, you are not going to be canceling any boosts because you don't have any.
You
gauge.
don't have any gauge, right?
But you definitely have force.
Sure. Yep. And you
And
definitely have something to strike with. Probably 2 cards at once to strike with an EX.
Yep. Yeah, like you in all probability will, like, you'll almost certainly have 2 force. Probably it's going to be this because this ends up in your gauge one way or another.
Right.
You can't strike with this right now, but you might save it or you might spend it, and then you're very likely to be pulling up EXs in some combination.
Sure.
Yeah, necessary discrepancy. It's wild. It is.
And also you say that you're very likely to be pulling up EXs. You'll know if you do because they're in your hand. If one half of them is in your hand, the other half is in your gauge. It's not like you're drawing a whole bunch of cards and you're like, well, I hope I get some EXs. You can plan for this.
Yeah, it's not random. So yeah, to be clear, when I say pulling up EXs, I don't mean that you got both copies of something in your gauge.
Right.
You might,
right?
Like especially with Bayonetta, you might. But it's more like, oh, I want to play EX Bayonetta. One's in my hand, one's in my gauge. Cool. I can now play EX Bayonetta. Just pick up my gauge and strike.
Right.
So it lets you fuse the things that you already played with now what you have on hands to make EXs. That's one of the things that allows you to make EXs a little more consistently than others. One of the others is just the sheer amount of draw.
Sure.
And then there's a third thing for specials only, which is this.
Okay, so I have some recursion as well.
Yes, you can recur a special from your discard to your hand and then strike. So you are striking immediately afterward, which means a few things. The really fun thing it means is that you can pick up anything you want and then play something else.
Sure.
And your opponent will now be somewhat disoriented. Like you pick up a thing that is very good in your current position. You pick up a range 4 Bayonetta, and then you strike with Aggressa. Right. Not every time, but do this often enough that your opponent has to be aware that there's a mix-up there.
Sure.
Don't use this to pick up a card and then strike with that card every single time. If they're out of things that beat the card that you pick up, then okay, yeah, sure, do that. Right. They have no sweeps, no focuses. Cool. I pick up range 4 Bayonetta and I play range 4 Bayonetta and they just eat it.
Right.
That's fine.
So my gauge is sometimes my hand. My discard pile is sometimes my hand as well.
Oh, it's much more situational than the gauge thing because this is a special only.
True.
And it leads into a strike specifically. This is also realistically leading into a strike.
Right.
But in both of these cases, you can also think of this as I want to strike and I'm going to need something next turn or the turn after. So you do this, strike with the thing that you already had that may have been completely different from what you're picking up.
Right.
But now you have that. So like you're like, all right, next turn, I want to play Delayed Explosion, or I want to play Brigadier Sword. Put it into your hands. Strike with slash or focus or sweep or grab. Strike with block for all I care. Strike with whatever you want.
Sure.
And then next turn, play that thing. Because you still have it, right? It's still in your hands.
Right.
Like that's actually my most common use case of Lucifero is not I'm picking this up and striking with it. It's I'm picking this up and I'm striking with something else. Because what I picked up was not an attack. What I picked up was a boost.
Right.
Because I care a lot about these boosts as part of my resource engine.
Okay, that makes sense. And I guess like if I'm specifically looking for EXs, it'd be expensive and it'd have to be for a special. But I could necessary discrepancy into take another action into Lucifero.
Yes.
Get something from both places and then play the EX that way. But
exactly. Yeah, like Daro's good at hitting, right? So Daro's a speed 6 that hits at 1 to 3 or maybe 1 to 4 if you're Ramlethal.
Right.
So it's probably going to be in your gauge.
Right.
At which point, if you happen to already spend it to cancel or as force, then yeah, pick it up with necessary discrepancy, take another action, boost Lucifero, pick up anything you want.
Right.
And now strike.
And one of the things that I picked up, the other copy was in my gauge. I've built an EX from nothing. There's possibilities here.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking for these, are there particular EXs you've mentioned Bayonetta as being a particularly good EX. You mentioned Sabrabato as being good, and then I assume just normals, right?
Normals are great. Now, obviously, you're not doing Lucifero for normals,
For
but
normals, sure.
normal EXs seem to be good. My go-to EXs are these two cards.
Yep.
Aggressa actually has some really good properties when EX, but I think the value of efficient and of the attack landing is so high that I will almost always split it up. Just
Right.
because landing 2 individual hits is so good.
So if you were
Um,
going to go for Aggressor Ordono as an EX, it might actually be from one of this combination.
right. It's like, oh, I didn't have this before. Now I do.
Now I do, and I
Now
can
is the
use it.
time.
I can use it right now. Okay.
Yeah. Like the main property is that it becomes speed 4, so it doesn't lose to dive, which means that if you're playing it and it gains 1 armor, 1 guard, so it doesn't lose slash. So at range 3, it becomes unbeatable.
Sure.
Um, like that's a notable property.
Yeah. It's an odd way of doing it, but like back in old seasons where we used to put light on spike. Well,
Yeah.
it stuns everything slower than it, and it well now it doesn't. Now there's not very many things faster than it. Cool. I've made
Yep.
an unbeatable attack or almost unbeatable attack.
Yeah.
Similar idea, except now I'm backing up instead of stunning.
Yeah. And in this case, it has enough defenses to deal with the few things that will come in on it, mostly.
Right. Sure. Sure.
Yeah, so like that, it's a solid EX. I don't use it because of the value proposition, or at least I rarely use it.
Right.
These I use a bunch. Bayonetto in large part because I'm going to be seeing a lot of Bayonettos. Like Vertigo Sword going to gauge on hit and necessary discrepancy being a thing. Bayonetto is the card I most commonly recur with Lucifero.
Okay.
It's in large part because of what this stat line does to an opponent and how scared it can make them. Where them playing around this, it allows me to abuse them with mid-range mid speeds.
Right.
Because you see this and you want to play a sweep, you might play a focus. You might probably play a character specific special if you can. That's going to be a counterattack.
Right.
At which point I will happily hit you with my range 4 dust. Right.
Sure.
So it's usually my go-to. I'm also a fan of just having it available so that then I can throw Brigadier Sword on something and then make something extremely silly.
Right.
Because now I have +2 range on something, and it's nonsense. But yeah, the Bayonetta EX breakpoints are specifically in conjunction with the character ability. So Bayonetta, like without delayed explosion, without character ability, is 3 or 5. So you go to EX it, you make it 4 or 6. These are not important breakpoints.
But 7 with your character ability definitely is.
7 is.
Yeah.
7 is a very important breakpoint. And so, like, the EX Bayonetta with character ability is oh, and by the way, 7 in Exceed is important because it's stun sweep.
Yep.
It's also important because it doesn't stun focus. This is a lie in your case.
because you can, if they play focus into your Bayonetta, you're eating pretty well.
Well, in this, so okay, we're assuming the power bonus.
Right.
What I'm actually assuming here is that they have used their focus by this time. So let's check my math, right? So Bayonetta printed 3 becomes 4.
Yes.
EX becomes 5.
Yes.
Cool.
Two more from corner.
If they're anywhere near the wall,
right,
then it's 2 more, which is still only 7. It's
right.
not going to stun a focus.
Okay.
The main catch about focus is you tax that TAX focus. Because through the entire game you have range 2 grasp, you have Bayonetta, you have where is it? Daro? Where did Daro go? I'm blind. Well, anyway, you have other fast things that are. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Yep.
And you also have things that's as like this attack, which pushes 2 on hits, which is annoying for the opponent to deal with.
And you're better at range than them. They don't want to be pushed.
And you're better at range than them. Yeah, like they're gonna even at range 1, right? It's like, okay, they don't want to have them. They don't want to get pushed out by grasp, because if they get pushed out by grasp, now it's your turn and they're at range and you're Ramlethal.
Right.
So you will tend to deplete their available foci over the game, which means that late game Bayonetta is often I'm just going to pick this up and win the strike. Okay, thanks.
Right. Okay.
And the huge advantage of how these things work is you will know if that's the case, right? You know how many foci they have left, and so you decide when you pick up necessary discrepancy and then look at Lucifero and go, okay, what do I want in my hand today? Do you want Bayonetta?
Right.
Or do you want them to know that you have Bayonetta and then you actually strike with the EX Sabrabato, which is not nearly as reliable, but it's so tasty. I like throwing 7 power attacks at things.
Yep. I know this
Eight
about
if I
you.
can help it. Yeah. So again, let's do the math. Make sure I don't make a mistake here. 1 to 2 is 1 to 3.
Yep.
Power 4 is 5.
Yep.
Hit push 1. If relevance, if you can trigger that, and I'm assuming that you can, because otherwise this was not a good card to play.
Right.
So they're up near the wall. You managed to trigger that. Okay, now we're at 7. EX makes 8.
Yep.
8's a good number. I like 8.
8's a lot.
8 does spin focus.
Yep.
So if they still have foci left, then it's often great to threaten Bayonetta, play something
and then
else.
Play Sabrabato, sure.
Yep. You're also free to just play things like EX Dust, but you can't pick up Dust from your discard pile. So that's why I'm mostly focusing on the specials here.
You can also, like, by spending some force on top of some of these things, you can make, I mean, for Bayonetta, you might not even need to in the first place. You can strike from outside of range of focus and at least you're not stunning it, but you're not trading.
True. Yeah, at range 5, this will be focused just fine because it only closes 2.
Right.
Yep. And then so at that point, if they couldn't be pushed because they're up against the wall, you are stunning sweep and evading focus. And at that point, it's extremely silly.
Yeah. Okay.
I will say you're often not going to end up out at range 5, but by all means, take advantage of it when it happens. Like if you end up at range 5 and your opponent is not themselves a projectile zoner and has really good ranged options, that's a great time to go, cool. Do I want to hit with a free Calvados, a free Aggressa, or a mostly free Bayonetta? You can do whatever you want.
Right.
It's just that you are not really built to retreat. You're built to corner people.
Okay.
Like, typically, you are pushing people away and then chasing after them into the mid-range.
And they're coming back to you, so a lot of the game is going to be spent over here because they want to avoid the corner. You're trying to push them there.
Yeah, like, you are mostly not going to be retreating out from 2 to 5 unless you play cross, and hey, by all means, play cross. It's not a problem for you.
Sure.
I wouldn't play cross at range 3, but I would... okay, if I need a speed 6 that hits range 3 and I'm out of Daros, I guess.
Right.
But mostly, if I'm striking with cross, it's 1 or 2, so I go out to a range that's really good for me.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That all makes sense. Now that we're talking about the normals anyway, are you, other than being able to go above curve with your normals, do you tend to value your boosts and your normal attacks and normal boosts similarly to other characters?
I'll say yeah. So, kind of. I mean, I'll say yes about badass because everybody loves badass. This boost is amazing.
Sure.
You have a particular evaluation of these 3 cards that most people don't, because these for you are a range 4 mix-up.
Right.
And they're a nasty range 4 mix-up, where a lot of people at range 4 have no option that beats sweep other than they play cross and leave.
Right.
Which, you're not happy about, but they're probably not happy about. To be fair, or to be clear, you are losing that strike because you paid 3 cards and they paid 1.
They paid 1, yeah. And you're, like, I mean, if they did it at range 4, you both have to come back in, but you have to probably come back in too. Like, you're probably spending force in that interaction even more.
Yeah, like, the thing that you have that beats cross at range 4, other than paying on Dauro, is this, because you will gain advantage and you're at range 4 and that's fine.
Right.
Like, you don't hit, but you still effectively beat cross.
Right.
But yeah, so these all being live at range 4 is extremely relevant, and Grasp being relevant at range 2 is extremely relevant.
Okay.
So I think because you care so much about Grasp, you will Let's Rock a little less commonly than several characters, just because the importance of having this threat alive is, it's extremely significant.
Right.
Because your alternative speed 7 is, again, way more expensive.
Sure.
So that's notable. You like dash just as much as everybody. It's for getting you out of the corner and then into mid range, where now you can beat people up, and that's great. Or it's for closing in against people who are zoning you at range 7 or something.
Right.
It could happen. Faultless is Faultless. It pairs well with Slash. It pairs well with Aggressa. You can do a couple silly things. I think I ended at least one game using Faultless, Brigadier Sword, Character Ability Dive, which is a I've lost track. Range 1 to 6, I think.
Range 1 to yes.
It's range 1 to yes with 4 guard. I'm like, okay, you're not diving over me. You're not stunning me. You're not evading.
Right.
It just worked. It was really expensive, but that's what I needed.
Right. Sure.
Anyway, but yes, like, Faultless is Faultless. It doesn't do anything really special for you other than pair well with Aggressa, and if you need the guard and Aggressa, you probably were better off doing something else if you could help it.
Right. Okay.
Parry is parry. I love playing parry. I will still typically play parry, even though you like having force
Having
and gauge and
having
stuff.
gauge, sure.
Yeah, my problem with using block to generate gauge on Ramlethal is if you had to pay force, you still had to pay force, and I don't want to be doing that. I would
Right.
rather, yeah, I'd rather pay force to land a hit and get gauge rather than pay force to not take damage and get gauge.
Right.
Would be my preference. Cross and area shift are both great for you. Dive isn't all that impressive with your, like, it doesn't do anything special with your ability. It hits range 5, okay. You don't usually need to.
And range 2 as well. You mentioned earlier that is a
Yeah,
concern for your
it is.
opponent to be aware of.
Yeah, it is significant at range 2. It's just that at range 2, you have your opponent will probably already expect the mid speed at range 2 because I should make this clear. Range 2 plus 2, 2 force for plus 1 max range and plus power. Play Dust is a very good play.
Right.
Dust does not need the range. It doesn't need the power, but Grasp does.
Yep.
And if they think you play Grasp, then they play Focus.
They play Focus,
and then you play Dust.
You kill them. Right.
Yeah. So like your range 2 mix up is usually these two.
Right.
And unless you run out of dusts, then they're going to generally beat dust the same way that they would beat dive. So they are the same side of the mix up.
Makes sense. Okay.
And I would prefer to play the dust because there's a lot more character specific specials that it deals with because of that 4 guard.
Right.
And I don't usually need that 1 point of speed more than I need the 4 guard. That said, maybe you are holding EX dive and you just want to hit them for a bunch of damage at range 5. Sure, yeah, go ham. But I'm likelier to spin this as Ukemi or as force.
Makes sense. Okay. Excellent segue.
Focus, you never need your ability. It's just, yeah, I'm just mentioning that as the last thing. You never need your ability on this. It's just for, I guess I want to trade better, or we're at range 3 and I'm very certain they're playing a thing that pushes me.
Right.
So but I'll prefer to play focus at range 1 and not use my ability.
Sure. And focus is just a high value attack pretty much whenever you play it.
Yeah. As it is for everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that's the kit then. That's and you started this lesson by saying like you are going to describe the toolkit and not really do much to suggest a line of play because you are a kind of a toolkit character. I'm noticing like many of the things that you discussed are in a vacuum underwhelming until you're like, oh right, I can put range on everything. Range and power on everything. Like this on its own, with these things economically supporting it, is crazy.
Yeah, like you can you're not somebody where range is everything. Outranging the opponents is something that you can do reliably against almost everybody.
Right.
And then you can afford to do it, and that itself is huge. Like you're drawing a lot of cards, you are able to consistently maintain a large hands. You can pick up, a card for your discard pile, or sometimes your entire gauge, and go, all right, now let me hit you with my 3 consecutive EX attacks. These all contribute to making you deceptively overwhelming when you have unremarkable printed stats. Because your specials printed stats are not very good.
Right, and you're not really going for explicit payouts. You're using your stuff flexibly. You're finding EXs to end the game with. Like I mean, comparing this to the guides we've done in the past few days together, we talked about Jacko last night, and the amount of like stacking your gauge for specific options and turning that into your end game play. Ramlethal is more similar to that than she is similar to like I hit you with Potemkin Buster and the game is over. Like you aren't necessarily going for a payout with Ramlethal.
Like the only really remarkable payout is Bayonetta, because of that stat line and those interactions and it still has to be amped up to be that good. Like it's still usually going to require delayed explosion to make it completely insane.
Right.
Everything else is like, yeah, that's good. It has a purpose, but I can also play a normal with +1 maximum range, +1 power, and it's going to be as good or better.
It's probably just going to be great, right?
Yeah, like you just want to be playing strong neutral, maintain a steady, maintain steady pressure over your opponent where they are never able to really get in on you. Hold your hand against their forehead.
Right.
And just stay on top of them.
Make use of your card draw both to fuel your ability, but also to see as much of your deck as possible to get the options that you need and hold them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And then unload them, but they're not. Yeah, it's not going to be dedicated payouts, right? So like EXR Bravado, I've sung the praises of. It's still just EX Sweep.
Right.
And EX sweep is great, but everybody has EX sweep. Like you're
Right.
not doing anything that is remarkable as far as that goes.
Right. It's not. It's not a. It's not. I mean, honestly, the thing that made me go like, whoa, in the whole kit was necessary discrepancy.
Is this,
Yeah.
which is the thing that says you're picking up all this stuff that you've already played around with or hit with or
Yeah.
whatever, but you're still just playing more Exceed now. Like you're
And,
still just striking from now on.
and in terms of power level, the other thing that probably should have made me go whoa in the kit is her character ability, but I've seen that already, so I didn't have the authentic reaction there. Like these two things on their own are very, very strong. You can turn these tools into an engine, and as long as you're running your engine, you're probably going to be very hard to beat. How much she's got a ton of card draw. She can push her resource engine pretty hard. Even then, I'm making difficult resource decisions pretty frequently with this character. Because 2-force is 2-force no matter how much card draw I have. I can get some of it back sometimes. I'm not always out of options. I have redundancy. I'm not always out of options. Any other tips to manage this engine that I'm building while I'm killing my opponent?
Yeah, I mean, so the broad shape of things, right, is you're looking at your hand in the board and going, okay, I need to spend for my ability.
Right.
The things you want to keep, if possible, you keep something that is one of your little reload buttons, one of these boosts, right? One of your draw 2, or draw 2/4. Like keep one of those so that you can boost it next turn for the reload. It's telegraphed, but oh well, if the opponent parries it, you're mildly sad, but okay, they aren't parrying something else. That's life, right? There's counterplay, but it's also these are impactful, but they're not so huge that most people are going to be paying the most attention to trying to snipe out that situation. Ideally, save something that you. So if you are initiating, you save something that you can use when they respond the next, or like when they strike on the next turn. So you've struck, you've blown out your hands, and you have a reload for next turn, and nothing else. And now they strike, you're wild swinging.
Right.
By the way, don't be afraid to wild swing. Conserve your resources. I personally will often use my ability with wild swings because I've run the numbers on what gains a benefit from doing it, and it's worth doing. You probably shouldn't.
Right.
Unless you are actually figuring out, oh, how much of my deck is improved by what percentage based on spending for this ability, which I will. I think it's a good thing to do, and I'm not saying don't do it. I am saying don't worry about it because you don't need to.
Sure.
It is perfectly fine to just wild swing, save resources, and then look at your hand and you play from your hands.
If you are looking to improve your Ramlethal play after you've already digested all of this stuff, like that might be an avenue you can go down. But there's other things that will improve your win rate before you have to take that measure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like that metric is most things that you'll be doing from Ramlethal play. You're a speedrunner, right? Your face.
Yes, I am.
These are I need to shave off seconds, and counting your deck for evaluating whether to use your ability for a wild swing is shaving off milliseconds.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that analogy.
Yeah, order of magnitude of difference here.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
But yeah, so like generally speaking, wild swinging to save your resources, especially on defense, if you're low in confidence, is good. If you are having any kind of a shaky time with resources, then being more conservative with your ability, though I hate to recommend it, in particular, use your ability when you can confirm the hits. So use your ability to make something above curve where you're like, okay, well now my range 2 grasp definitely hits.
Right.
Well now my range 4 slash definitely hits.
Right.
Use it for those things
rather than like range 5 dive or range 4 slash.
Wait, no, I said range 4 slash.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
So range 4 dust is awesome.
There you go.
But range 4 dust can still lose the dive.
Can still lose to things. Right. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, range 4 slash.
I messed up my my normals whose name starts with D.
Oh, that makes sense. All right. But yeah, so like making a thing above curve means that you're likely to land the hit. Landing the hit means you're likelier to get the gauge.
Right.
And if you're really pinched, you can also play your 2 on curve specials. Where the heck is the other? Where's Araluma? This is Araluma. Where's Daura? There we go. I keep doing that.
Right.
All right. So on curve at 2, above curve at 3, on curve at 3. This is on curve at 3, and it's going to gain you resources. So like Araluma in a pinch is a solid attack to use just for a little bit of resource leeway.
Right.
I prefer to use it for the reload, but instead of saving the boost for the reload, just using the attack so that your pressure doesn't run out of cards is completely fine.
Right.
Like that is the main use case of the attack. Is to sustain your resources so that you don't end up needing to reload.
Right.
It's just at the cost of you're not playing a very strong attack
Right.
numerically.
Sure. And I mean, again, not speaking too much to play style because this is a toolkit that we're describing here. You have said pressure enough times, and I know how you tend to play characters, that I am assuming that we are uh doing everything we can to make our opponent feel uncomfortable, and that probably means that we're going to be striking into them fairly frequently.
So it's deceptive because I play Ramlethal more as far less as a rushdown and far more as a defensive pressure character, because what I want to do is I want to be at a range where my opponent knows that I'm winning. I'm already winning.
Right.
And then I'm going to put something into play that says, and now I'm winning more. Right. So these two boosts especially, but and delayed explosion in particular, is I'm now rebuilding whatever I spent to get to my favorite range. And if you let me, I'm threatening an obscene payout. Now, you don't have a lot of power boosts to work with, so there's only so far you can take this, but that is kind of my preferred Ramlethal playstyle, is where a lot of the times I'm telling them, hey, you're losing the next strike, but it's your turn. And then the interesting part for me is they have done something to deal with that. They have moved in, they have set their own boost, and now I have to initiate to make sure that I can capitalize on my advantage before it goes away.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. So like I put this into play, and they go out to range. They cross over, so they're nowhere near the corner, and they're here. And I go, okay, I'm probably striking this turn. And I need to figure out how I maximize the value of this, because I don't want them to get away before I can use it.
Right.
And that's to me, that's like the interesting part. The interesting part is how you capitalize on your pressure. But you exert pressure basically just by being Ramlethal at range 2 to 4 and having resources. So getting your resources right is the first step, and then being at range 2 to 4 is not that hard. You have a lot of tools to do it.
Right.
Your opponent might have a lot of tools to get in, but yeah, they're commensurate.
And that's the tension, that's the push and pull. The other thing that has come up a couple times on these guides with other sort of boost oriented, or at least like threat oriented rather than strike oriented characters, is like, when I remember the first time I played Akuma, I put down a big scary power boost or something, and I was like, all right, I'm great as long as they don't move. And then obviously my opponent, who is not asleep at the wheel, did anything, and I was like, oh, I didn't anticipate that, because where I was in the game at the time was I am at the right position to set up a threat that will work in this position, forgetting that my opponent had a turn. So as Ramlethal, you are setting things up, trying and then dealing with their responses, and that's where your payout's going to come in.
Generally, and I'll say the really big difference between Ram and Akuma, between Ram and Akuma in that context, is Akuma, you played a boost, you ended your turn, your opponent did something to defuse your boost. Okay, you're sad.
Right.
Ramlethal, you play one of these boosts, you got something else. You did a big change cards that drew extra cards on top. You drew some cards. You drew some cards, whatever.
Sure.
You were getting something else out of it other than just the stats, especially for these two.
Right.
And that means that you're not out as much if they just make you whiff. I will say that these things are things that you don't want to whiff, because the hit go to gauge is important.
Yeah.
But if you put range into play, chances are you will be able to make something connect.
Right. And this one you're often canceling.
Right. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then just strike with it at range 1 or at 4 to 6. Basically, you can strike with that, and it will probably just work.
Makes sense. Okay.
But yeah, so it's a thing where, like, you may have the issue of the opponent diffusing your threats. I personally really enjoy the process of, I've threatened, they're diffusing. Now I have to make sure that I actually get the value that I wanted out of this. So I find a way to capitalize that prevents them from actually diffusing it.
Right.
But in any case, even if they are diffusing it, you got something else out of it.
Right. And you've made them commit a resource that will change the shape of the long game that you're playing too.
Mm-hmm.
But so we aren't rushed down. We honestly, like what Ramlethal feels like to me, having done a couple of these lessons now, is like she feels like a character from a previous season of Exceed that has kind of been like time warped into Strive. She feels kind of Street Fighter, kind of like defensive set play, like that style of game, but with cancels and with a lot more ability to pressure offensively than they would.
I can see it. I think my main qualm is that if she doesn't just say, like, so Ryu says, I play this boost, now I'm pressuring. Ramlethal just exists. at
Right.
2 to 5
Right.
and says, now I'm pressuring.
And that's her pressure because it's coming from her ability. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so managing your resource game is the key. Without resources, you are not playing Ramlethal because you're not pressuring with your ability. So your ability is doing nothing, which means you're not playing Ramlethal. Like
Right.
you are
This is the character.
the yeah, you are wielding the two gigantic swords.
Right.
That's not quite the quote. But it's very close to the quote. Okay, hold on. Nope, I'm gonna get it.
Is it in really, really, really small text on the character card?
No, that's the same on all the characters. Um, it's just giant. It's wielder of two giant swords. That is literally her subtitle.
You are the wielder of two giant swords. That yeah, okay. That yeah, if that's the fantasy, I think that works for it. So you
That
are
is straight from Strive.
you are your own boost game. You are your own pressure
Yes.
engine. Everything else is just maintaining it. Okay.
Yeah, like you are starting from the position that a lot of characters are in when they have a boost in play because you can do this on offense or on defense. It's just that it's going to cost you, and so making sure you can sustain it is the core of your gameplay.
Understood. Gotcha. Okay.
All about those resources.
Um
Other than that, yeah, other than that, I tend to agree because that's how I tend to play. Is like, hey, I've got better stats than you. You've
right.
got to do something about it, and
Right.
now it will
Oh,
turn into a mix-up that favors me.
oh, you did something about it. Now let's deal with the fallout of that decision. Yeah, okay. That push and pull is familiar to me as someone who has played a couple of old seasons of Exceed. Okay, so it sounds like that is the closest we can get to a prescriptive game plan on a character who is this flexible, on a character who is this kind of like oriented around pressuring in neutral.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you want to mention about kit or strategy before we go into counterplay?
Let me think. Nope. Oh, I think I mentioned this, but I want to make it very explicit. Uh, Calvados' after effects. If you initiate to put a card from your discard pile into your gauge, any card.
Right.
Necessary discrepancy. Return all cards from your gauge to your hands. Take another action. So you strike with this. You put something in your gauge. You boost this. You return Calvados to your hand because it hit, and something else to your hands. Now strike with anything. Get a gauge. Strike with Calvados. Put something in your gauge. You Mortavato a second time. Right. If you want to.
Right.
You can loop some things here. You can do some interesting things, and especially because whatever you spend on Calvados could be the thing that you put back. It's very, very cheap to use. But yeah, mostly looking at how this after sets up necessary discrepancy is, that may not shave off seconds, but it'll shave off like a tenth of a second. It's a going back to our speedrunning, it's significant because this attack is extremely reliable. This after effect is extremely reliable. Getting ready to do whatever you want to do by making sure that something in your gauge is something that you want in your hand is like that'll get you toward your end game. But yeah, the general Ramlethal game plan is play good cards, make them better when you need to, and don't run out of cards. So there's my prescription.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And given what you've described, it's like, yeah, you have good cards, you have the ability to make them better. You have the ability to not run out of them. Seems like a winning formula.
Yep. Okay,
right.
so yeah, that's that.
Yeah. So I guess then to wrap it up, tell me a little bit about what my opponent is doing to stop Ram and whether she needs to kind of change anything about her game plan to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, so when you're fighting against Ram, you want to actually be paying attention to the ebb and flow of her resources if at all possible. Well, specifically the ebb.
Right.
So naturally, as you can guess, you're going to want to pressure at range 1 if you are a character who is solid at range 1. If you're Axel, maybe don't. But if you're Axel, then fight her at range because she has fewer projectiles than you. Anyway.
Right.
But yeah, like her least favorite range is 1, so by default, that's where you want to be. You're also generally happy to you should be happy to initiate into her, forcing her to commit to responding with something. It's like if you initiate with focus at range 2 ever, then she knows that spending on grasp is a commitment, and she will be hesitant to make that commitment. So she'll often decide to just wild swing, which can let you get away with stuff.
Right.
Because committing resources and then losing is pretty bad.
Right. So represent that you are willing to be to deviate away from but initiating with focus at range 2, what if they defensively dust? You have to do that. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to do that in order to put it in her head that you will.
Yeah, if you never do it, then she will know that at range 2 she can defend with grasp and always be safe.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
you never want her to have that option, because if you give her a thing that is always safe, she'll save that. She'll tuck that into the side of her hand and save it for when she absolutely needs it, and then she can do anything she wants with the rest of her hands.
Right.
Which mostly will involve throwing it at you to deal damage, which is not what
Right.
you want.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so I started by saying ebb and flow of resources. So when she does commit resources, especially if she's initiating, also true to an extent if she's defending though. Like if she just defends by spending resources, she's probably going to then try to rebuild the next turn. But she still has this moment of her hand isn't what she had planned. She's brought new cards, but they might not be the cards that are good in her current situation. If you can get to range 1, you're probably still somewhat advantaged. Even if she has Baddest in play, you can still play a focus at range 1, and it's going to be good against most things that she can
Right.
throw.
Right.
But yeah, like and if she's spending on initiating because she had to diffuse like your own boost setup, for example, if you have strong boosts, by all means play them. And she has to initiate to get rid of them. Well, she spends 3 cards. Now it's your turn. This is when you pressure her. Like this is when you go, okay. If we have just done a big exchange, I'm out 1 card. She's out 3, and I can strike with assault slash at range 3. Didn't that was me this time anyway. Which I know she can beat.
Almost all the way through though, D. Nicely done.
So close. So anyway, it's like, all right, I know she can beat this. She can pay 2 force uncross. She might be able to play Daro if she has it. If she was saving that for some reason.
Right.
But in particular, though, if she pays 2 force to then win when you're pressuring her, she's probably completely out of cards. And like she's probably down to 1 or 0 cards.
One of those things that she spent to do this cross at range 3 or do Daro at range 3 probably had her reload on it.
And yeah, exactly. If she has to keep spinning out of hands, at some point she will either commit her reload and give it up, or she will just start wild swinging.
Right.
And she's by no means the worst wild swinger, but she's not great, especially at range 1. And you initiating does matter a lot, where you will win speed ties with cross at speed 6. You will win speed ties against Aralumo at 5. You will stun this with your own slash.
Right.
You will stun this with your own sweep. You will outspeed this with your own slash. She's going to be sensitive to those speed ties a decent amount. This is why she wants to use her ability to make things 1 range greater than they actually are.
But then using her ability is what put her in that low resource situation in the first place that you are now exploiting as her opponent. So there's a tension here.
Exactly. There's also a notable thing, which is that because of that speed tie phenomenon, and also because of Daro, she does not like you playing EX attacks. Nobody does. Don't get me wrong. Right. But she is particularly susceptible, where an EX attack means that this does not get her above the curve, because it'll just bring her even.
Right.
Because you are 1 above curve now.
Right.
And this thing, which she could make above, like could make even faster, starts out above curve, can go to a range 4 speed 6 attack, doesn't stun.
Right.
Unless she's in C mode, at which point you have a problem. But
does that also make I know, for example, D, that you love defensive EX slash.
I do. Absolutely.
Are defensive EXs slightly less valuable against Ramlethal than they would be against other characters because she can so consistently be above curve when she's initiating?
Yeah, I mean, if she's initiating with her ability, then I would rather just take the loss and then try to pressure her on my next turn. I'm mostly worried about stuff that gains to her advantage if that's the case. And if I can deal with that, I can, although it's going to be hard because Bayonetta is pretty hard to beat.
Sure, makes sense. Okay.
But
knowing when to lose then against Ram is important counterplay as well, is saying like, well, okay, that she's spending on this strike, it's probably just a loss. If I can beat it, I'll beat it, but otherwise, like, I'll just win harder on my turn later.
Right. And that's exactly what I was trying. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going for, is like, look at her resources more than necessarily anything else to go, when is the time to actually exert pressure on her, versus just try to stay even and neutral and force her to commit to something eventually. Because when she dips down is when she's susceptible to pressure.
Right.
You also still don't want to overcommit on your side. This is just a general thing of characters who can be a little faster than you at all times, where you don't want to commit 1 million cards to a mix-up that she can diffuse with 3 cards. Right. You want to commit, 1 or 2, and then diffusing it is more costly for her than it was for you to play it. So like playing range 2 dust is fine. Playing, I don't know, plus 6 power dust at range 2 is not fine if you don't have any focuses, because she'll just play grasp. Like that, not worth it anymore.
Right. And normally we're in a paradigm where Ramlethal is probably spending more than her opponent. But if you are investing that much and she can just say like, well, 3 cards is less than the 6 you put on this,
Exactly. Yeah.
I'll just do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Like you don't want to out invest her.
Right.
Um, you want to look at when she invests and decide how to minimize your losses, and then after doing that, come out afterward with whatever you can to pressure her as offensively as much as able.
Right. Odds are
Um,
you don't have her card draw. You can't afford that level of investment very often anyway. Like
mhm.
like don't fall into that trap against her.
Yeah. Be
Okay.
cautious and also be evasive with if these two things are in play. But if you can, and that's an important caveat, you probably can't.
Yeah.
If she's putting these in play, she should be doing it because she knows she's going to hit you.
Right.
She is 100% sure. And if that's true, well, yeah, don't try to, don't play dive over her at this point because she's probably playing, cross at range 3 and it's just going to hit. But if she is just throwing this out as a neutral tool at range 4, for example, and saying, yeah, I'm doing this instead of setting up for later pressure, I'm doing this now to see you defuse it. This is a reasonable time for you to, if you are a decent range character, strike with cross. This is
Right.
a reasonable time for you to boost something yourself and dare her to swing into you. Like you want to deny the things that give her resources, which are mostly these 2 boosts, because you probably can't deny the other big things, which are her
Yeah.
exceed
And
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 the
like
on curve.
you can't get rid of a boost with a now effect that draws cards. Like that's when she plays that
Yeah,
the time for
she's
denial is
already got
already
value.
over. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh yeah, one other thing. If you have reading, it's going to be good. She will often, especially later in the game, end up in a case where you can seduce some of her hand, and she might have just shown you some of her hands.
Right.
So even though she'll fritter away normals on this force cost, she's going to end up with some normals if you have reading. If you don't have reading, this is also fantastic.
Sure.
He does not like wild swinging. Because, as I mentioned earlier, committing resources to that wild swing to make it as good as the attack she wanted to play is hard to do.
Right.
It's usually not worth it.
Right. So she'll
So yeah,
wild swing. She'll wild swing raw, and that's worse than what she was gonna do.
yeah. So like it's reasonable to scramble later in the game or to reading later in the game where you're going, okay, she's probably going to launch into the 3 strikes that will end the game in her favor. Let me nip that in the bud by getting ahead of things right now.
Right.
Earlier in the game, play focus by all means because she has to know that you'll play it sometimes to beat the grasp at range
Right.
2.
Gotcha.
Hmm.
All right.
Mhm.
Well, I think then, D, I may have a pretty decent idea about what to do with Ramlethal.
Excellent.
Anything else that you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Yes. So I forgot to do this last time. If you like Ramlethal,
Oh, yes.
play Ramlethal.
Did you have that one saved up?
Oh,
Did you
always.
did you have that one
Always.
planned? I'm so mad at you. So so similar resource engine here, I assume, a similar resource oriented character.
Extremely resource oriented, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she's actually part of the lineup of characters. So I mentioned before, like I think there's kind of a lineup of characters who are very resource oriented, and I think Ramlethal is probably the easiest of them, like the most approachable of them.
Yeah.
The most prevalent ones off the top of my head are these.
Okay.
And brain is failing me. There's a couple others, but these are the big ones. And so actually, yeah, here are the characters that if you like Ramlethal, you might like, which each have this property of when setting your attack, you can spend force for something.
Right.
No coincidence, no coincidence there, right? Fight doesn't do it in the same way. Vincent doesn't do it in the same way. Fight gains power. Vincent gains guard. Rimless, on the other hand, makes her attack EX, which is a lot like gaining bonus range. It plus 1 speed and plus 1 range are very
range
similar.
speed. Yeah. Similar thing. Okay.
Yep. And I'm biased here. Rimless is one of my favorite characters, and I definitely came to love Ramlethal in no small part because I realized I could do a lot of similar things where I'm creating an important threat and then making them do something and then committing resources in such a way that I can beat whatever the heck they're doing.
Right.
There is one big difference. Rimless is a grappler. She loves range 1. She is not a ranged character.
She's not a zoner. Okay.
Yeah. Um, this character is not a zoner, but she is not a range one character. She
Right.
is squarely a mid-range brigadier, wielder of 2 giant swords, uh, as is her actual title.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So,
Hmm.
and do you think that Ramlethal could kind of serve as like an on ramp for some of these? Because you've mentioned that she's one of the easier resource oriented characters in the game. You know,
Hmm.
if you've gotten good with her and you want to dip into something a little bit tougher, these might be an option.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like, I think they are probably sequential in that they're harder as you go back.
Okay.
So if you're interested in fight and but have trouble with his force costs, then try Ram. Conversely, if you have fights and you are interested in Ram, practice your fight some and get used to him.
Right.
Fight has more speed boosts. She does not have speed boosts, but she has her ability. So
Right. So it's similar things are happening there, and clearly the ability to spend force and knowing when to do it is going to be a transferable skill.
yeah, that's the I can spend force on defense. I have to make sure it's worth it, but if it's worth it, it's very worth it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the common thread among these. Okay,
Makes
that's the
sense.
thing I wanted to make sure I remembered.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, D, as always, thank you so much for your expertise on this. Really interested in trying out Ram. Probably later tonight. I'm gonna give her a try.
Sweet.
Um, really excited to do that. Thank you so much, as always. Always a
My
pleasure talking
pleasure.
to you.
Yeah, thanks for giving me an excuse to ramble about things. I love doing it. And yeah, I'll say another of my favorite characters. I have a lot of favorite characters, but
It's
you know,
almost like you like this game, D.
I like this game a lot.
Yeah, it comes through, and I that's very valuable. So thank you for that as well. Thank you
Yes,
for selling people on these characters. It's a lot of fun to hear your thoughts on this stuff.
excellent. And yeah,
Yeah,
by the way, anyone watching this, regardless of the time of year, if this character interests you, if you like her, be my Valentine.
good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.